Some people put in 100% in a relationship when they first get into it. But it's not just some people. This is someone with unhealed childhood wounds, and they have an avoidant attachment style. And generally, those with the fearful avoidant attachment style, they may put in 100% at the very beginning of the relationship. And as time goes by, they'll pull back a 5%, which you won't notice because you think by now this is the perfect person. This is the person you've always been searching for. And as more time goes by, you're probably going to notice that they're pulling back maybe a 10% to 15%, but it's still not enough to talk about. You probably think that, well, this person's busy, they've got other stuff in their lives, we're in a different place right now, we're comfortable with each other. But you'll probably start to talk about it when you notice 25%, 30% of the effort is no longer there. You'll ask what's going on. And they'll say, oh, no, nothing really. I've just been busy. They'll up their effort to about 5%, and you'll see that they're making an effort, and you'll be comfortable with that. As time goes on again, they'll pull back another 5% and another 10%. Before you know it, you're like at 40% of the effort you saw in the very beginning of the relationship. And this is where you bring it up again. It's like, hey, I'm kind of feeling a disconnect here. Something's going on. What's happening? Things are not the same. Of course, there's an excuse, and they'll give you another 5% of effort, and you think, oh, they're making an effort. We're on track. Everything's good. You don't recognize that they're not at 100%, because at this point, you're lucky or you're happy to see any effort. When they get down to giving about 5% in effort, that's when you start to really get concerned. That's when you start to notice that you're the one putting in all of the effort into the relationship. You start to probably talk about it, which may sound like complaining to them. And they start to say, you're too demanding, you're too needy, and I can't give you what you want. But they'll give you a little bit of an effort. It's called breadcrumbing. You hang on to that, hoping that it can get to that place where you first met, where it used to be 100%, where this person was the perfect person for you. Now, here is why it is so important that out of an old relationship, when one relationship ends, where you would have felt so deprived in that relationship, now it ends. It's so important that you don't rush into a new relationship, and this is why. If you've been deprived, if you've been starved of affection and love and attention, and you move into a relationship with another fearful avoidant or with someone who's got an avoidant attachment style, then you're getting the full 100% all over again. And you're in a place of need and lack. And so you grab onto this like a starved child, because now you're thinking, you're able to see what you were not getting in that relationship and how you can be fulfilled. And so you start to think like you did in the last relationship. This is the perfect person. Trust me, I know. I've moved from one relationship to the next relationship to the next relationship. And every relationship, I thought this was the perfect person. It's only with time that I started to notice that, wait a second, it's not that 100% anymore. I didn't notice the 90%. I didn't notice when it got to 80%, because I too thought that people get busy. The dynamics of relationships change. And we really only notice when it gets to about 50% and then 30%, you start to realize you're the one who's putting in 100%. They're probably putting 10, probably 5. And if you talk about it, it becomes a you thing. Now, if you give yourself space after a relationship ends, what happens is you start to really reflect upon the past relationship, and you see that this was not all you. Your responsibility was to take your time. My responsibility was to take my time. So you want to take your time, figure out exactly what you want your next relationship to look like, compare it to what you had in the last relationship, think about what was said at the beginning of the relationship that you should have probably paid more attention to, but decided, oh, I'll overlook it. When you notice that, wait a second, the effort is kind of waning here, and I talked about it, nothing was done, or a little bit was done, and then we went right back into the same cycle. When should that relationship have ended? When should you have said, okay, you know what, this is not working out. This just doesn't feel right. I need to leave this. And we didn't do it. Now, we want to ask ourselves, why didn't we? What was missing in our lives, so much so that we settled for crumbs? We didn't choose crumbs. We didn't want crumbs. We settled for it. We settled for the little morsels of attention, but we didn't slow down on our efforts. A personal share. I dated someone with a fearful avoidant attachment style. In fact, my entire past is with people who still have a fearful avoidant attachment style or dismissive. And one person, I remember at the end of the relationship, I asked, would you date someone like you? And he said, no, I won't, but you would. By then, I knew I wouldn't. Because in that relationship, I started to look at the dynamics of it, the exchange of it. And not that we want to get into a relationship where there's a fair 50-50. There's never a 50-50. But you want to be with someone who respects you, who cares about you, who doesn't make you feel like you're there for their benefits. You want to be careful with those things. And that only happens when we get out of one relationship and we reflect upon the past. We give ourselves some good time to heal. The healing isn't just crying and having ice cream and getting over that person. It's really reflecting upon the past relationship. What's gone wrong? What did we accept? Why did we accept it? What is it we want our future to look like? Who do we want to be in that new relationship? Write a list of who you're looking for in a relationship. And do you have those qualities of the person that you're looking for? Become that person so that when you meet that person, you're very familiar with that person. That person looks like you, and you want to be able to date you. That only happens when you give yourself enough time to be in a place of receiving a different kind of love. Now, I've been asked, how do you know it's enough time? When your mind does not go too much to your ex and wonder, what are they doing? Do they miss me? Do they have regrets? When you're no longer thinking about them that way, when you're thinking about them and it's like, oh, they crossed my mind, I hope they're okay. That's when you know it's time for you to move on. I hope this helps.